We have a lot to cover today, including the latest trade talk around the Toronto Maple Leafs, Montreal Canadiens, New Jersey Devils, New York Islanders, several other teams as well, including the Philadelphia Flyers and LA Kings. We also have a big signing in Vancouver, lots of injury updates as well, and other news from around the league. All that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot of news to cover here today, but before we jump into that, I just want to take a moment and acknowledge the birthday of the all-time greatest player in NHL history, Wayne Gretzky. The great one turns 62 years young today, so certainly he's still very much involved in the game of hockey in a variety of ways. Certainly a great influence on the game in so many different aspects. Hope he has a great day, great birthday. Happy birthday, Wayne Gretzky. We do have news from the NHL waiver wire. The St. Louis Blues have forward Matthew Pekka on waivers. Matthew Pekka has yet to play in the NHL this season. He did sign a 2-year contract with the Blues in the offseason. That contract is a two-way deal with a very lucrative American Hockey League salary of over $300,000, but yet he ended up hurt to start the year, so he's on season opening injured reserve. Now he's ready to play. He's gone down to the AHL and done a conditioning stint where he's appeared in 6 games and put up 5 points. Obviously, the Blues at this point are wanting him on the AHL roster more than the NHL roster, probably for at least a while before they give him NHL games, but he will need waivers in order to go down and do that officially now that the conditioning stint has come to an end. So Matthew Pekka officially up for grabs on a league minimum 2-year, two-way contract. Now we also had a fairly significant signing today, as I mentioned, in Vancouver. They've come to terms with the pending UFA winger Andrei Kuzmenko. Of course, Kuzmenko came over from the KHL and has been an absolutely terrific fit with the Canucks. Obviously this year he's played 47 games, scoring 21 goals already and 22 assists, so he's most likely going to be 30 plus goals, probably 60, 70 points, somewhere in that range. It could even be more than that depending on how the second half of the season goes for him. But certainly, like I said, a good contract, good fit. $5.5 million per season. He's got a 12-team no trade clause as well. Now, he's also been good on Elise Pettersson's line, which is, I think, bodes well for the next few years. His probably not a coincidence here, his AAV of 5.5 is the same as Bo Horvat, current captain, who's expected to be traded. But again, this is another clear case that Bo Horvat's going to be traded. They've already signed JT Miller over Bo Horvat. Now they signed Andrei Kuzmenko over Bo Horvat. They give him the same AAV of Horvat's contract that's coming off the books soon. Horvat's agent, Pat Morris, has also been in Vancouver the past few days, and the Canucks management team have basically refused to meet with him. They haven't made an offer to Bo in, I think it was early December was the last contract negotiations where an offer was made. So I think it's pretty much seals the deal, if it wasn't already, that Horvat is indeed going to be traded. There's no doubt about that. They've kind of made up their mind here. I know a lot of Vancouver media have debated whether this Kuzmenko contract, it was the right move. It's not that the contract's not good. He's put up the numbers. I think this is a very fair contract. No issues there. From his perspective, too, the cap should be a fair bit higher in a couple of years. So if he continues to play well and put up good numbers, he can really cash in at that point in time. But should the Canucks have sold high, many feel that they could have gotten a really solid return on him, especially on an expiring contract under $1 million. So that could have really been quite positive and helpful for a lot of teams' cap purposes, that he could have been a great deadline addition, and they might have been able to pick up some really great future assets. But the Canucks see him as somebody they want to keep, obviously, as I mentioned. So I guess I'd love to know from you in the comments, is signing Kuzmenko the right deal, or should they have traded him? Again, another player chosen over Captain Bo Horvat. As much as I don't have any issues at all with the contract, I think it's fair and very much earned. It's just, an odd choice in my opinion. The longtime captain is once again overlooked, but we'll see how this team does. Going to be a lot of changes over the next little while as well. Of course, Rick Tocchet in his second game last night as the head coach of the Vancouver Canucks suffered a fairly significant loss to the Seattle Kraken. Completely different game than they had in his first game where they beat the Chicago Blackhawks. Tocchet also didn't hesitate to call his team out in the post-game interviews. He even referred to them as soft, made mention of the leadership needing to get better. So certainly, as he mentioned, lots to do. There's lots to work on, and it's going to be a long road before he gets this team where he hopes they can go as well. So again, another Canucks situation there that we're going to keep an eye on. This team is going to be very interesting from a variety of aspects between now and the end of the year. And of course, another signing as well, this time in the New York Rangers organization. They've been quite pleased with defenseman Ben Harpur, who's been playing a fair bit as the third pair left shot defenseman. He gets a 2-year contract extension valued at $775,000. So he's been solid on his own end. He's got great size, not afraid to be physical, does drop the gloves on occasion as well. So really this is a pretty good, fair contract. A fair team-friendly contract as well for your depth on the team. So good on Ben Harpur, who will be a good asset to them down the stretch here. Some key injuries from last night's action that we've seen and some other updates as well, including Ottawa Senators goalie Cam Talbot went down with an injury last night. Nothing really, obvious happened. He did try to make a kick save. When he got up, he looked a little uncomfortable, went to the bench, came out. Looked like it's probably a groin type of issue. They called it a lower body issue, and he left last night's game. Anton Forsberg had to come in and play the remainder of the game against the New York Islanders, where they did pick up a 2-1 victory. The goalie market in Ottawa is in rough shape because for the goalies they would call up, like for example, Matt Sogard, who was arguably their best prospect goalie and potentially goalie of the future, who's been playing in Belleville in the American Hockey League. He's currently injured. They do have Antoine Bibeau as well, who's a bit of an older veteran around. He's hurt right now too. They had to call up Kevin Mendelez, and he's going to be up at the big club to back up Forsberg for the next few games. They have 3 more games remaining before the All-Star break, so hopefully they don't run into any issues with Forsberg. Forsberg's going to have to play both ends of a back-to-back as well. The Senators play the Leafs on Friday night, the Habs on Saturday night, and then they have one more game again against Montreal a few days later before having a long stretch off into the All-Star break. I think they have like a 10-day stretch where they don't play, so they're hopeful that by the time they come off their break, that Talbot is good to go and ready to return. Because if he's not, that's not going to go well. It wouldn't be shocked to see them even be scouring the waiver market or to find another, fringe NHL goalie to pick up via trade or something. It'd be times like this that they would probably wish they still had Magnus Hellberg and didn't have to put him on waivers earlier this year, who they lost to Detroit. On to some other injury here. Shane Gostisbehere, the Coyotes defenseman, is hurt yesterday, and he's going to be out for 4 to 6 weeks. Well, we are just shy of 6 weeks to the trade deadline, so he's certainly expected to be moved. He's on an expiring deal. He's done extremely well with the Coyotes since the Flyers paid Arizona to take that contract on. He's been able to find his game, play a better role, and really kind of revive his career, you could say. I think he's going to be a very interesting offensive defenseman at the deadline. I do wonder if this will have any impact on his trade value. Maybe not too much. Obviously, teams will be a little bit concerned over the injury, but as long as he's going to be able to return right around the deadline or shortly thereafter, I still would expect him to be moved. And, it shouldn't hurt too much, but certainly not a great time to be injured when you're on an expiring deal waiting to be moved before the deadline. So those are your key injury updates from around the league as of last night. Onto the trade section of the video. I know Frank Saravalli has had a lot of talk, obviously, on his site, dailyfaceoff.com, and some of his shows he does on there as well. He's linked a variety of players to the Calgary Flames. He's not necessarily convinced they're going after one or the other, but a few players that they're currently watching, as the Flames will want to make some deadline additions to make sure they get in and secure a playoff spot, include Vladimir Tarasenko of the St. Louis Blues, James Van Riemsdyk in Philadelphia. He also mentions Max Domi as well in Chicago, all being potential players that the Flames are keeping an eye on and will entertain trading for at the deadline. We know that the Flames have been looking for another top 9 forward all season, so hard to say what direction they go. All of these players play a bit of a different style. Obviously, Domi's going to give you a little bit more grit. JVR is obviously more of a net front presence, good in tight, maybe on the power play, but you're not going to play him as much 5-on-5. You're obviously not going to put him on the PK or anything like that. Tarasenko, more of a pure goal scorer as well, so who could help on the power play and has a really good shot. And, just a different kind of player yet again. So we'll see what the Flames do. But, not surprised that forward would be the area they add. I think they're happy with their goaltending. The decor is pretty solid. Although I do know a few nights ago I seen Tanev leave injured. If he's out for any length of time, that could change their plans a bit as well. But certainly keep an eye on the Flames and some of these players that we've seen mentioned here. Now, the fourthperiod.com is also looking at a potential deal between Philly in LA. Now, the fourth period has a variety of writers. Anthony DeMarco spends a lot of time focusing on the Flyers, has suggested that the LA Kings are one of the teams interested in defenseman Ivan Provorov. Now, we know Provorov is certainly available based on everything we've found out about his status with the Flyers here in the past few weeks. I do think that situation involving this decision to skip Pride Night and the warm-ups might turn off some teams. I don't know, but I know there was a lot of talk right after that it could impact his trade value. Certainly teams don't like to have any kind of stories that are remotely negative or depending on how they see things. So it just makes you wonder if teams might be skeptical or not, because sometimes they just don't want to get involved. Other times teams don't care, and we'll just have to see what they do here. But, in terms of Provorov, it's no secret that a fresh start and a new team for him probably would be beneficial to try to find his game and hopefully get back to being the defenseman they thought they had in his first couple of years in the NHL. Now, the LA Kings, we know, have looked at a variety of left shot defensemen to add. We know they've been linked to Jacob Chychrun. No surprise here that they'll take a look at Provorov as well. I know, according to DeMarco, though, he suggests that if the Philadelphia Flyers are going to be having conversations with LA around Provorov, that they start those conversations by asking for young top centerman, the former number 2 overall pick in the draft, Quinton Byfield. I'm not sure that the Kings are going to go down that road. I mean, if the Flyers could get Byfield for Provorov, I make that trade all day long, every day of the week. But, like I said, I really don't know that the LA Kings will be willing to pay that kind of price. I think if they might be willing to move some more other prospect centers, maybe Alex Turcotte, is also a very high pick himself, but is certainly a little bit behind the 8 ball when it comes to his development. So I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting proposition. I just don't see LA making that deal. Now, we also seen the New York Islanders general manager Lou Lamoriello come out and basically give his coaching staff a bit of a vote of confidence. Obviously, Lou placed a lot of the team's lack of success on his own shoulders, shouldering the blame, taking that on himself. And, the fact that he gave the coaching staff a vote of confidence saying that it's not their fault, they're doing a good job, or his exact words there. But, basically, you got to take that with a grain of salt. If you look back before Barry Trotz was fired, it wasn't not long before that he gave him a vote of confidence. This happens all the time. As of right now, that's how Lou feels. But it doesn't mean that you won't see a coaching change later on, either, in 2-3 weeks from now, or if not in the offseason. It's one of those things that it's hard to say. But Lou himself is on an expiring contract, a lot of uncertainty around his future with the club. Will he remain in the GM chair? We don't know. But I know some NHL insiders, I know Jeff Merrick's mentioned on his program on Sportsnet Radio a few times that he feels that the Islanders definitely need more scoring. And he also mentioned Vladimir Tarasenko as a potential trade target there as well. But you have to really look at this team and ask, should they be buying and spending big assets? I don't know if that's going to make enough of a difference on a long-term basis, or should they maybe become sellers and try to retool? It's hard to say what the right solution here is, but Tarasenko's name has come up a few times recently as being linked to the Islanders. We'll have to stay tuned and wait and see what Lou decides he's going to do. On TSN Insider Trading tonight, Darren Dreger's mentioned that the Montreal Canadiens are indeed getting a lot of phone calls on Sean Monahan, where he's expected to return from injury in the not-too-distant future. Here, he's been out for some time, and teams are certainly very much interested. The main team mentioned as being the prime suitor at the moment would be the Colorado Avalanche. Now, the Avalanche, defending Stanley Cup champions, it's widely expected they're going to add another centerman before the playoffs. That's certainly an area where they're weakened after losing Nazem Kadri to free agency this past year. Obviously, that's the spot that's not really been filled to the point that they're happy with. So it would make a lot of sense that an experienced centerman is what they target. There's no doubt. We've mentioned Avalanche and Monahan being connected before, and obviously things are continuing to pick up as the Avalanche monitor his situation and look. Now, one of the main reasons why they may prefer a guy like Sean Monahan over a player like a Bo Horvat or a Ryan O'Reilly is the trading asking price is probably not going to be as high, and the Montreal Canadiens might be more willing to retain some salary than some of the other teams that they're talking to knock that salary downward to make it more affordable for the Avs. They don't have a ton of space cap-wise. Captain Gabriel Landeskog, some people had suspected that maybe he wouldn't return until the playoffs, and his contract could be LTIR'd all season long and help them really add. But Pierre LeBrun added that that's not likely going to happen. LeBrun mentioned on that Insider Trading show that Landeskog is expected to hopefully play sometime in early March, so he should have a lot of games under his belt before the playoffs come around. So that's certainly not going to be the case. But we'll have to keep our eyes on Sean Monahan to the Avalanche. For sure, these two teams have hooked up before. I think that does make a lot of sense that the Avalanche take a long, hard look at this player. And also, Timo Meier is getting a ton of attention as well. I know we've seen a few different teams mentioned, but I know Pierre LeBrun was talking on a Leafs program, Leafs podcast, and saying how the Leafs certainly have interest, and it does make sense that they might be able to do it. But the problem here with the Maple Leafs and Timo Meier is that they would not do it with an extension, most likely, because it's difficult to wrap your head around how they could potentially afford it. I mean, Meier's due a $10 million qualifying offer, and you know what? He's worth pretty close to that. If you look at his numbers, both offensively and all the advanced analytics, this guy's a really, really good player, and he's going to get somewhere around $9 or $10 million on the open market if he becomes an unrestricted free agent, because nobody is going to qualify him at the $10 million rate. At least that's right now the belief. But unless he gets traded to a team who will do the extension, then that won't be an issue. But a team like Toronto, yes, there's interest. It's confirmed by NHL insiders, but it's going to be trickier to do. And of course, a team that is also going to offer an extension to get him signed is probably willing to pay a little bit more, which will increase the return for the San Jose Sharks. So that's certainly a disadvantage that the Maple Leafs have in that sense, especially when, like I said, it's been reported they would prefer not to trade Matthew Nyes or their first-round pick, and there's just no way they'd stand a chance to gain Timo Meier in a trade without having those assets used. I don't think it's possible in the Leafs. Now, of course, the other thing to mention here is that the New Jersey Devils are certainly the team to watch. Pierre LeBrun also talked on Insider Trade tonight, a completely separate interview, but he was mentioning how he had an interview with GM Tom Fitzgerald of the Devils. Of course, you can't mention players of any other specific teams, but he has because he also writes for The Athletic. He's working on an article, so we interviewed him, and he did indicate that his trading at the deadline would be focused on adding a top six winger. And based on how this team plays and what's available, Timo Meier sticks out as being an absolutely perfect match there. They have some great assets like an Alexander Holtz who they might part with to intrigue the Sharks to make that move. They might be willing to move their first-round pick as well. So to me, New Jersey, I think, is a leading team to watch and the team that probably makes the most sense for Meier to be acquired. But like I said, you got to watch a few other teams as well, like the Leafs and a few other teams like that are going to be trying to contend. But I just think they're going to have a tougher time, and a team like the Devils is probably where he's likely going to end up, which is really going to give them a major boost and a big push here to be that much stronger come playoff time. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Devils try to add whatever they can. And I think Damon Severson might be a guy that get moved out to create it if they need the cap space to keep adding on. So it should be an interesting time as we get closer to the deadline. All kinds of things happening here today. So let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumors down in the comments, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.